Hi there, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Matthew Blades, and today we're taking to the mean streets of Ahwatukee. Just kidding. That's the community I live in. And a few weeks ago, I was getting a massage at my favorite neighborhood spot. It's one of those places that shares office space. So there's like a massage therapist, there's an acupuncturist, a sound place that is so cool. And as I would come to learn, a place called Amity Counseling and Consultation, which is where you're going to find Colleen Steppa. I reached out to her to see if she'd be interested in being on the podcast, and as fate would have it, she said yes. Today's podcast is a roller coaster ride, and for all of you folks with a short attention span, this one is for you. I love Colleen's style, and I hope that you like our podcast together. We're going to cover a lot of ground, but spend some time on relationships, both personal and business, and why some stay when they know they should leave. At the end of the podcast, she's going to explain how she uses one of her tools, a sand tray, to help people she works with communicate without words. Again, stay tuned for that. After the podcast is completely finished and wrapped up, there's going to be a little surprise at the end. Enjoy today's episode, and thank you so much for listening to Learn from People Who Lived It. If you could do me a huge favor, we present this podcast absolutely ad-free, and the way that you can help support it is by sharing it with friends, leaving a review wherever you listen, and more importantly, come on back next week. Thank you, guys.
Looking for no bullshit conversation about mental health? Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Now I talk about my own life, but I guess like more in a private way because...
For sure.
Yeah.
It's weird that you say that because I'm actually finding myself, now that I'm not as much in the public eye as I used to be,
Yeah.
craving more privacy.
Yeah.
And I'm having more and more moments where it's like, that doesn't need to go on social media. I don't need to post about that.
See,
It's quite nice.
I had the opposite thing happen because an entire year I just didn't use social media at all. And then I was like, well, I actually did stuff, and where are even the photos from that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I went through this thing where I was like, am I obsessing about this? Am I doing things just because it might look good for a photo? Like, is this ruining my body image? You know, it was just like a whole thing. But then I was like, I feel actually I'm not connected to people in some ways.
There is that piece of it.
I know.
So I'm reading right now, listening rather. Let's start the podcast.
Yes, let's start it.
We are clearly like, well, let's just jump
we're
right
doing
in.
it. This
Colleen.
is how I talk. So
this is perfect
Okay.
because I'm actually listening right now to The Anxious Generation. I don't know if you had a chance to read that
haven't.
book yet. It's fantastic.
Okay.
But it really does a
I'll write
great
it
job.
down. I have
talking.
such a long book list though.
Do you?
Yeah.
This is a good one. I've got a lot of
Okay.
psychologist friends of mine that are talking about this book. And because of the social media piece, and I think you probably know this from your work, but like in one generation, everything's changed. And the phone generation came in the early 2000s or whenever the 2010s it really took over. And all of a sudden kids, everybody had smartphones. And now we are doing what you just said. This is what made me think about it. I think it's smart for us to question our relationship with social media.
Yeah.
It's smart to do what you did, which is maybe I'll take a year off. Rethink this thing, recalibrate how I'm going to approach it.
I mean, I don't think everyone needs to take a year off. I just kind of did it. I'm not saying that I do things like perfectly either. I kind of like will go to one extreme and then another. Okay, I have two thoughts about like social media. One is that every single generation that's ever existed always looks at the new technology and goes, oh my God, the world's ending. Like
for sure.
Like Pride and Prejudice, that book came out in like chapters in like some kind of periodical and people would read it, you know what I mean? In like Edwardian England, and they're like reading the next chapter and people were like, you're reading books, you're wasting your time. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Because that was like frivolous entertainment. And then it would be like going to a play was frivolous entertainment. And now that's like high culture, right? And so like, I think there's stuff on social media that's absolutely toxic, but that stuff already existed. The problem is that it's like, there's ways that kids are consuming things without any context.
Right.
And adults consume without any context, right? Like, my biggest pet peeve is like psychology branded content that's just other garbage that is like literally somebody is just trying to vent about, their life. And then they're posting it as though like, this is real content that, is psychologically founded, but they don't have any kind of research backing. Like, I will post stuff that's about my life, that's about my opinions. And I'm like, yeah, this is research-based, but this isn't. I'm just saying this right now. You know what I mean? And I do think if you're like a 14-year-old or something, and you're trying to understand maybe something like, I don't know, maybe you're gay and you're wondering if you should come out, and you're like confused about your sexuality, you get this weird like masculinity content or femininity content, and it's very toxic. That's the stuff I absolutely hate, like garbage.
Yeah.
Throw it in a fire.
Well, I think we're at a stage with social media where we know enough that we know we should probably be looking into certain restrictions for younger people. But I think the problem, and it's funny, I just had this conversation with my son this afternoon. I was telling him about the book that I was reading, and I said, but the problem here is that the people that need to enforce the rules are as addicted as the kids who are on the phones.
Yeah, actually, I read some research that like phones are like people's attachment figures now, and I'm kind of like okay with that, because if you have attachment insecurity, like we need to give you something.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And people can find attachment, but it's like you also need the real thing. You need to like maybe use it as a bridge to getting attachment with other people, right?
Sure, of course.
So like
Especially for kids.
Yeah, for kids, the age restriction things, I just always kind of feel like kids are going to outsmart them.
You did.
Right.
Right.
It's like good and bad, because some things that adults try to restrict shouldn't be restricted, but then sometimes it's like, I mean, I remember when YouTube came out, people would share videos of like beheadings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of stuff, I'm glad that there's censorship about, but then there's other things that it's like, do we really need to do this?
Okay. All right. Well, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
It's an interesting topic, and I think I know it's evolving, and in 10 years it's going to look different than it did now.
Yeah, totally.
You know, I was telling my son, again, going back to this conversation, I said, you know, when cars came out, they didn't have seatbelts, and people were dying, and so they said, let's do something about it, so they put some seatbelts in. When cigarettes came out, they knew it was bad, but they didn't do anything about it for a long time, and now there's a warning on every carton. Social media will get to that point.
Yeah.
We're just not there yet. We haven't sorted it out. We haven't really figured out where we're headed with that whole thing yet. But it will look different in 10 years. I am certain of that.
Yeah, one thing that like is frustrating for me as a mental health professional is that there will be like AI censorship of certain words that we need to be able to use. Like, for example, the word suicide.
Yes.
I'm not talking about somebody should commit suicide.
Right.
I just want to talk about the fact that it exists and I want to prevent it, right? But like on certain apps, you can't use that word. Or like even, you know, using some combination of words of talking about someone killing themselves. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But that's like a reality and we talk about it. And if we don't talk about it, then people think nobody has these thoughts and that they're alone in the world with it. And they're actually more statistically likely to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, like that's a frustration for a lot of mental health professionals, I think, is like the AI censorship.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know much about it, but I'm
It's
sure
weird.
it's brewing. Yeah.
It's like, if you've heard like young YouTubers and things, they'll like speak in a weird way where they'll say things like sewer slide instead of suicide, or they'll say corn instead of porn because they're trying to not be censored, or they'll even use emojis. So it's like unintelligible sometimes if you don't understand it. Yeah.
Well, let's talk
No,
about...
we can talk about something else.
I know. Well, I'm interested in talking about you, the practice, kind of like...
Yes.
Because part of the reason that I like to sit down with psychologists from time to time is to kind of take a pulse.
Sure.
Figure out where are we right now? What is the state of the union, so to speak?
I don't know if I'm the best one to say that.
But you're an example. You are a
Okay.
piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
You know, you're down here in my beloved community, which is Ahwatukee.
Yeah,
And,
okay.
you know, I'm guessing that some of the folks you serve are neighbors of mine, friends of mine, people that I see at the grocery store. And, you know, the reason that I always think it's so important to work on your shit is because I have to deal with it if you don't. Yeah. And if I'm your neighbor and you're a pain in the ass, I got to deal with you all the time until you sort your stuff out.
Yeah,
so it's in your best interest and my best interest and everybody's best interest to just work your shit out and figure it out. And one of the things that, you know, can be helpful for that is therapy, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy, working with a counselor, working some stuff out, getting some tools that you didn't have before. So here's my question. I think this is the first official question of the podcast.
Okay, I'm sorry
Colleen.
if I'm like digressing too
You're
much.
amazing. Don't worry about
Okay.
it. What are you seeing a lot of right now? Is there a theme that keeps walking through the door post-COVID here in 2024?
Okay, well, I will say that as a therapist, the kind of like lore that we tell each other in the field is like whatever you're dealing with internally is what comes through your door. And so that's like, for me, that's
Interesting.
true. Yeah. I will also say, just when you were talking, I had like 3 ideas. One is that I'm so thrilled to see men talking about therapy. That is like, yay, I'm so happy about it.
Yes.
Okay. So like, I'm really happy you're doing this podcast and just talking about it in general. And the other thing is like your neighbors and like talking about cleaning your shit.
Yeah.
It's like every single person who sits on my couch, or, you know, metaphorically, because I do like online therapy, there is a specter of 7 to 10 people behind them that they are like, how do I get them to go to therapy? That is it's like, how do I get everybody else to go to therapy?
You go.
Yeah, well, you go. That's the thing. But I do want to just say as like a PSA for like everybody out there who's in therapy, because I feel like the people who listen to your podcast are going to be those people.
For sure. Yeah, they're taking some steps.
Yes, they're like taking steps and they're really invested in their mental health and they're doing stuff. And then they're like, why can't I get these other people to go to therapy? And I'm just like, you're doing your part. There's this saying, I really like Voltaire. I like French literature.
Okay.
And like, there's this whole sort of like epic saga that happens in this book, right? And like they all get like messed up, and then at the end they're all like sort of living together, this like little group of people. And Voltaire is like, or sorry, it's Candide. That's the name of the book. So Candide is like,
you could have run with that, and I wouldn't have known the difference.
Someone will though. Some internet person will be like, you got it wrong.
Get on the keyboard and get
yes,
nuts.
They are. Yeah. So like there's this character, Professor Pangloss, who is like always giving bad advice, and he's kind of like a parody of like The Educated. And Candide is sort of like a child going through life, but he's an adult. So at the end, Candide's like, what do we do? Like, we're all at the end of this saga and we're all mangled and busted. And then Professor Pangloss is like, okay, well, we just tend to our garden. And that in French is like, cultivons notre jardin.
That's what I say all the time.
So like, but that to me means you are only responsible for yourself. And then like the 6-foot radius around your person, around yourself. So that means like whoever you come into contact with, you're responsible for your behavior towards them, and you're responsible for your behavior towards yourself. And then as far as like things about like, you know, global events and stuff, we can do only like our part, and then we have to rest and let other people do their part. Okay. We can think about it and worry about it, and we can write our Congress people, we can donate and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, like that's just something, the kind of like tend to your own garden of like, what can you do? Because almost all the time people who come to therapy are like actually the people who try to do way too much, and then they burn themselves out, and then they actually become a burden to others because they're not taking care of themselves enough.
Yeah, certainly. It's totally my story, right? I had total, complete burnout, spin out.
As like a journalist, what did you
version
do?
Of myself. I was a radio personality for 28 years.
I mean, you're on my couch, so you do have to talk about yourself.
For sure. I'm happy to tell you a little bit about myself. So yeah, in 2021, I got this wonderful thing called shingles.
Oh, I've heard of shingles. Ick.
And it is like the worst thing ever. It's basically your body's way of screaming at you that everything you're doing is completely wrong and you need to take an about face right now.
Is that what's in the medical manual?
That's literally what's in the medical manual.
That's on the brochure they gave you at the doctor.
You're fucked up. Fix everything about your life. And so so I got the shingles. I healed from the shingles.
Wow,
and
good.
Because you heal from it takes about 3 weeks to heal from the shingles. And so, you know, like anybody, if you take 3 weeks off of work, you might feel better. You get sleep, you're eating right, you're seeing your friends and family. So I felt better. And then a few weeks later, I got the first of 3 nocturnal panic attacks, which woke me up in the middle of the night feeling like I was having a freaking heart attack. And when I went to the emergency room for the 3rd one,
oh no,
it was so bad that I went to the emergency for the 3rd one because I thought I was literally having a heart attack and dying. And I'm sure you heard this all the time.
Yeah, that's the feature of it, just so people know.
Yeah,
like
you're not dying. It's okay.
No, the feeling that you're dying is actually a typical feature of panic attacks.
Yeah. They're terrible.
Yeah.
And my doctor came in after like running all of these tests because we have a family history of heart disease. Okay. And he said, "You're physically fine."
Oh, but that's actually the worst because I have so many clients who will come in here and they have these like stress manifestations of like psychosomatic illness.
Yes.
And when they get told they're physically fine, they just deflate like a balloon. They're just defeated because they're like, well, what's wrong with me then?
So that's what I did. So in that moment, I looked at my wife and I said, I got to go get help. I got to go figure this out because if it's not physical, then it's spiritual or it's mental.
Yeah, no, you're right though. You were right to do that.
It's one of 2 other things, and only tending to your garden. It was time for me to tend to my garden because I didn't tend to my garden for so many years.
But we're all told to do that.
For sure.
Yeah, nobody tells you
I love that you said that because I speak on this subject now, and one of the things that I say in front of people is That's a great sentiment. Our moms and dads were right. We should be kind to others. We should do other things for people. We should be as helpful as we can. But they leave out a sentence at the end, which is not at the expense of yourself every time.
No, this martyrdom stuff, like, no, get off that cross. That's mine. I belong up there. Like,
it's no fun.
That's what I say to my clients all the time.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, but it's just not at every turn can you always give, give, because you're going to find yourself empty. And like my story is when I was empty, I promise you, I was the worst dad, worst husband, worst friend, worst coworker. And the thing that I was really terrible at was myself, taking care of myself. So anyways, that's the catalyst for this whole movement. So I was in the middle of this crazy retreat, had this big revelation, learned all of these things, worked with healers for 5 days, had this amazing life-giving experience. And Saturday night in the middle of our retreat, I said, I'm walking away from my job. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to help other people because this is what the skill that I bring to the world. I can help other people share their stories.
Yeah, because you do journalism, right? That's like your training.
Yeah. So, but and through that, right? Because stories are the way that we connect with you. I'm sure when you're in therapy, you could read jargon to people, but if you told them a story that would have the same message, now they're going to connect.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I do therapy.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's such a good therapist, though.
Oh, stop.
No, it is.
Give me, here's the thing. Everybody likes therapy for the first couple sessions because they feel validated. But then when I start to get into the stuff you need to change, people don't like it anymore. So we'll see how much you like me if we talk long enough.
Yeah. Well, I listen, I had to go to some really ugly places. And that's the thing that I think we don't tell you enough about, especially with mental health. It's like if you're going to confront these demons, and let's talk about trauma. If you're going to confront trauma from your childhood, from your past, some terrible event that happened to you, you are going to have to walk through the fire for a few minutes. But it's the people who constantly avoid the fire who have all the trouble. For me, I just had to walk right into the flames. And it was hard as hell, super scary. I can't even tell you the way that I felt on some of those moments where I was working through what I refer to as my trauma trilogy.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying.
Yeah.
But now that I'm on the other side of that, I wish I would have done it 20 years ago.
That's what everybody feels like. Yeah.
I wish I would have. I wish that I had sat down with somebody like that 20 years ago who would have told me those things that profoundly changed the way I look at the world.
I feel like the way the world was 20 years ago, I don't know if you would have felt like you were able to do that.
Oh yeah, it all happened at the right time, for
sure. No, like the kind of rhetoric around therapy and the accessibility and the ways that people felt about just like healing in general or talking about feelings.
In therapy 20 years ago.
Yeah, but the way that therapy existed 20 years ago is not the same as now.
What do you think's different?
Oh, so many things. Well, like a lot of it is like the formality of it, right? Like I think the field has sort of relaxed its formality, and that's been good for people, right? Because therapy, like historically, has been something that's only been available to super elite people. And as a field, so like my license, I'm a social worker, okay? So as a field, we've had to sort of like fight to be taken seriously, and I think it got too far where like then people felt like you couldn't go to therapy unless you were a certain type of person and it costs too much, and that your therapy's not like going to be accessible for like people of color or young people or people who aren't educated. You know what I'm saying?
Can I tell you something really quick?
Yeah.
Truthfully, this is why I'm in your room right now. I was getting a massage.
Yeah.
And on the back of your card, it said something like, pay based on what you make.
Yeah, sliding scale, yeah.
Sliding scale. And I was like, and so truthfully, that's the reason I reached out to you.
Oh. Well, a lot of people do that.
It really is.
Because a lot of people do that.
Because it needs to be celebrated, because what you just said is so true. Yeah. It's really incredibly expensive to go through therapy.
And it's ridiculous.
It's even more of a time suck because the first one might not be the fit.
I know.
Second one might not be the fit, right? And then you feel like, what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. It's hard. The system is really, really tough to navigate.
I could talk about that, but I'm sure you have other topics. Yeah. If you want to do a whole podcast about how I hate insurance companies, like I have things to tell you.
Every doctor I work with hates them.
They do. They're evil. They're like this big evil monolith that we can't get around. But yeah, for me, it's not just about like the sliding scale being a thing where like, I mean, I can't afford to have everyone be on sliding scale, to be honest. That's part of it.
You would need, right?
I know, I have to take insurance, so it's evil and I have to make a pact with them, but whatever. But part of it is also that I need to be knowledgeable about the way that I come into a room that can make somebody feel like they're not welcome or they're not smart enough or they're not good enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And whatever that identity is that they have, I need to like kind of come in with like humility around it and not come in here like I'm throwing thunderbolts down from Mount Olympus. You know what I mean? Because I found I don't even have my degrees up in here. You know what I mean? I just have like art and stuffed animals and toys and stuff.
Lots of toys.
Yeah. Because I don't think people need to see my degree. I think they want to know it exists. Like, I'll show it to them, whatever. But I don't think that that's actually what people are about when they come. I think they want to see somebody, like, people, like, breathe a sigh of relief the first time I cuss in a session. I see them kind of be, like, you know, formal, and then they're kind of like, I can do it too.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that I never use language in a way that makes people uncomfortable, but I will just kind of, like, test the waters and see how they talk, and I try to talk a little bit like they do. And, like, it works.
The best therapists have that gift.
Well, there's, like, a thing, common factors that, like, I taught at ASU for, like, a year, grad students in social work, and they did research on, like, what actually works in therapy. And it's so simple. The most important predictor of success in therapy long-term is the relationship with the therapist. So clients who said, I feel like I can talk to my therapist and not be judged. I feel like I have a good relationship with them. I feel like they understand me and I trust them. Guess what? They did better. So, like, we don't need to actually have all these trainings. We should, because, like, I need to know things. When you talked about walking through the fire, I was like, ooh, I'm glad you came out okay. Because sometimes people do trauma work and they dive in and they freak themselves out and then they never do it again. Yeah. So I always kind of go slowly with people, and we do this thing where it's like, we're going to do a little bit and then we're going to come back. Mm-hmm. We're going to do a little bit and then we're going to come back. Like a toddler. Like when a toddler is like playing on a playground, they go back and check on their mom and they're like, okay, and then they go play and they have fun. And then if they like fall down and cry, they look to their mom and their mom's like, I'm still here. Yeah. And they go out a little further and a little further, right? Like that's usually how people do well. It sounds like you just were like, I'm done with this. And you just
I knew it
went
was time.
in it.
I knew it was time, right? Like I had beat around the bush long enough, and I think I represent so many people out there. I pretended like I was okay. I pretended like I had it all together. I pretended like I was too busy for it. I self-medicated for years and years. I did all of the things that I think most people do to avoid the big thing. But it's my feeling like eventually, if you have demons, and don't get me wrong, not everybody's like got crazy demons, but we've all had hits. We've all had things happen to us, not as big and as small as others, but it's not a contest, bro. Like we're not out here. It's not a trauma contest.
Yeah, we call it the trauma Olympics. Or
like
the
if you hurt,
Olympics.
you're hurting. And I don't care if it was just a little thing or a big thing. It doesn't matter if it was big T or little t to me. If it sucks and it's owning your life and you can't sort it out, talk to somebody who can help you. Yeah. Because there are really smart people out there who have tools to help you get through your situation. That's why we have this podcast. And so I'm going to press you on a couple of questions.
Oh, yeah. Please ask questions.
I want to know about relationships.
Sure,
It's going to be, it's the universal thing. People stay in relationships all the time when they don't want to be there any longer. Work, personal, all the time. This is a universe like, yes, I'm talking about some people that I know that have that situation, but I have 8 or 10 friends right now that I know are in relationships where they really don't want to be in that relationship. And I'm talking both personal and work. So from your standpoint and some of the things that you see, what are the reasons for people staying in relationships that they know they need to get rid of or out of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like if you're in a psychological state where this is the relationship that you have, if we just sort of like erased that other person from existence, you'd go find yourself another one because that's what you are comfortable with and that's what you feel you deserve and that's what you've just sort of like brought into your life. So like it's not necessarily that they like hate being in that situation and then they're just forcing themselves to stay in it. It's like I had a professor who said that there's always function and dysfunction. There's always a reason that you're staying in it, and it's not in the sort of like deprecating way that I'm saying this, that like, oh, well, you're doing it to yourself. It's like, you don't know how to not do it. So this is your mode with people. Because if you have this problem in your marriage, you probably have this problem in other places, right? If you're the person who like sleeps in a separate bed and you don't talk to your spouse and you guys are just kind of like, you know, it's like you're like coordinating train schedules, you know what I mean? You're like going over the telegraph or whatever. You probably have some struggles like that with your family, with your friends, with other people. And if you could bust out of that, you would. Like, people live in misery because they have no idea how to get out of it. Mm-hmm. But that's because emotional tools like that are just they're not readily available. And I think the internet's actually pretty cool like that. So I will plug something. I'm not getting paid or anything. But like, if anybody has any relationship issues.
Thank God, because I didn't bring any money.
Yeah. Give me a 5 on the way out. It's whatever. I don't care. No, I don't care. This is fun for me. So like the Gottman Institute, it's Gottman. They're like the pinnacle of research on couples. And they have templates for all kinds of stuff, but their research, I quote this to people all the time. So it's like they did research on couples in Seattle. They had an apartment building. They bugged it so you could like hear the conversations.
Okay.
They also did a pretty good job, I think, with diversity of couples, and they did this again with gay couples. So it's pretty universal, their findings. They studied how people talk to each other. How did they fight? How did they make up? And then they looked like 20 years later who was still together. I don't know if it was 20 years, but anyway, they did really good research and they continue to do it. They found that couples would do these things called bids for attention. So like if like I'm at home and I want my husband's attention, I might just be like, oh, I saw this article about this thing, about this person that, you know, we've talked about before. Mm-hmm. And now he's got 3 choices. He can ignore me and pretend I said nothing, which is hurtful to me, right? Or he can say, like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Why do you show me these? Like, get out of my face.
Right.
He can be negative.
Just shut you down.
I mean, that's an exaggeration. But people can be like, oh, whatever. You know, just a little face can be like a rejection. Or he can say, well, that's cool. Like some kind of positive, okay? Which one of the 3 do you think is actually the worst?
The worst?
Yeah, the worst.
Let me think about my answer.
Just quizzing you because I like to see.
Well,
so you know 2 are bad.
I'm thinking about so many things right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me walk you through where my head is right now, because there is this thing that we can do with children where when they say, you know, look at my drawing, and we say, oh, I love it. It's the best drawing ever, honey. You're the greatest artist I've ever met. But that's not like, you know, some psychologists will say that's not the way to do it. What you should say is, how do you feel about it, right? And then make and build it up from their standpoint. So if they feel good about it, then you're in. So that's why I'm leaning towards, like, what's the worst thing that they can do? I actually think that the worst thing that you can do is probably pretend like you didn't hear it.
Yep. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Ignoring. Stonewalling.
Completely ignoring.
Yeah. So they call it stonewalling. It's just ignoring because people feel like they don't exist. They go crazy. Like, it's just so rude. And actually, the couples who fight and they're at each other's throats, they still love each other because they care enough to make each other mad.
It out, right? To work it out.
Yeah. So that's,
to speak.
And I would say still that the couple that is like, you know, sleeping in separate beds but still is together for the kids, I think they still love each other too.
I would agree.
I will never ever say that someone doesn't love someone else. I cannot inhabit somebody's brain and feel their feelings.
Right.
People often behave in non-loving ways, but how dare I say that they don't love someone?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
I won't.
So I had, have you seen Inside Out?
Oh, yeah, like many years ago.
Okay, but the new one just came out. Inside Out 2 just came out.
But you have kids. How old are your kids?
Mine are a senior and sophomore.
Oh, so they're not going to watch that with you.
We took them.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, we took them. I had the opportunity to interview the psychologist that they consulted for the project.
Wow, you interview everyone.
I talked to a lot of people. And so one of the cool things that she said in our interview, let me see if I can kind of get this whole story correct. When I'm dealing with she deals a lot with teenage girls. And when I'm dealing with teenage girls who are in relationships that aren't very healthy and aren't very good and kind of toxic, she says that one of her tools is she will ask the child, what is working for you? Because you wouldn't stay in this relationship if it was all bad. So what is working for you?
Oh, that's so good, because so one of my specialties actually is domestic violence and like abusive relationships. And like, the things that people say to someone who's in like a bad, quote unquote, bad relationship.
I know, bring it on.
It's so rude, and it's so like, because I have been in these relationships too, and for people just be like, well, just get out. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is so
brilliant.
Thought about that. I never thought about that. You know what I never thought about either is quitting smoking, quitting drinking, exercising. Like, shut up.
Right.
Like, I just hate that. So, okay. So, like, people are stuck. They don't want to be there, but they're in love. You know what I mean? Like,
and there are things that are working.
Yes,
there's
there are
stability.
Things that are working.
There's family. order sometimes. I mean,
or it's like what you're used to, and you're afraid of losing someone because you love them and they actually love you back, but the behavior that they're exhibiting is harmful to you.
Yes.
And you can't force them to stop that behavior. And so you feel like you're trapped in this endless cycle. And so, yeah, like having actually just like to give teenagers a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that like they're not stupid.
Of course
they're
not.
just behaving in a way that feels natural to them, and they need better examples. And unless we have somebody actually love us consistently and in a healthy way, we don't always know what that looks like.
Right.
And that's actually what a therapist can do. Like a therapist can sort of replace or like be like a surrogate for somebody in your early life who didn't give you consistent love. And it's just like, I'll sit here and people throw things at me and say things. I mean, when I say throw things at me, if you're violent, you get kicked out of therapy, okay? You don't get
They
to
throw toys.
You can throw a toy once,
and
then you're done.
And then you're out.
Yeah, but like, you know, people will say things and they kind of look at me like, oh, are you going to reject me? Are you going to hate me? Are you going to still work with me? And I'm like, I've heard worse. I've done worse. Like, come on.
Right.
So it's the example of like having somebody accept you. Carl Rogers is like a humanistic psychologist. He called it unconditional positive regard. So positive parenting is that you love your child no matter what they do, okay? You don't allow them to do things that are harmful. You still like give them punishments and rewards and things like that.
Yeah.
But you never withhold love from a child.
Sure.
So like kid doesn't brush their teeth, you're like, okay, well, you know, you're not gonna get to play your games until you brush your teeth because you have to brush your teeth.
Right.
But I still love you. I don't withhold my love because you didn't brush your teeth.
Right.
Right.
It's not what's wrong with you. Why did you forget? Why are you so dumb? How can you forget?
Right.
I mean, it's just wild
No.
how you hear people talk to their kids.
That's the way that they were talked to, and they think that
course.
it works.
I mean, you
well,
and
they
I
think
both
it
know
works because they see outward behavior of the kid behaving. You know what I mean? Behaving, quote unquote. The kid's just terrified. They're just internalizing that terror, and then they've learned now, like, how do I behave when the adult is here? And they're not actually like building any kind of internal morality system. You want to give your kids, even really little kids, you know, like a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old. By the way, I don't have kids, so people are going to come at me and be like, you're not a parent.
You're fine.
Okay, whatever. I know that kids are rough, but like if at least maybe like 50% of the time you can get it right, you're doing just fine as a parent, so don't criticize yourself.
Right.
Like,
and truthfully, the only people that even care about it are the ones that are trying.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's 100% true.
Yes,
if you're going, am I a good parent?
You're
probably a good parent because you're making some effort.
If you're actually reflecting on your parenting, you're doing a lot better than a lot of the parents that have existed before us. So yeah, but like a little kid can understand cause and effect, okay? So they understand that like, I don't know, a little kid does some random thing wrong. Like they put a toy in the microwave. Okay, you put your toy in the microwave and the microwave broke. So now you do not get your toy because it exploded the microwave, and we're not gonna make chicken nuggets because we can't use the microwave.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Even a little kid, they might have a tantrum.
Sure.
But you're not going to be like, well, I hate you and you're the worst kid ever because you broke the microwave.
Right.
It's a kid's nature to be like, what will happen if I put this in there?
That's what they're supposed to do.
That is what they're supposed to do. That is science.
So I'm a youth hockey coach. I run the hockey program.
Of course you're in hockey. You're a Minnesotan.
I'm a Minnesotan.
Yeah. I don't hear your accent. You must have been here longer than me.
I left Minnesota in 1996.
So that's how long it'll take for mine to go away?
I don't know. I don't think I've really ever had one, to be
I have
totally
one.
honest with you.
When I go home, it gets thicker. It was like so thick last week, and now it's kind of it's gone again.
I'll be back there next week, and we will definitely go down and take a boat and put it on the lake. You know, probably do some skiing there. And
Well, you can't ski yet.
Yeah, we'll do water skiing.
Yeah, water
good, right?
skiing,
And maybe some fishing for the
Yeah.
walleye.
Get some bars.
I'm definitely going to hit some bars. It's out of control up there. Okay, back to us. Relationships. It's got to be one of the biggest reasons that people show up for
I know.
you.
I keep digressing, but I'm kind of going on the topic a little bit.
Yeah.
By a bit, yeah.
But it's important to sort of drill down on this thing because I think that's the value of talk therapy.
Yeah.
My podcast is built on 3 principles. The first one is to encourage you to help you feel less alone. Next one is encourage you to talk about it. And third, share your story with me when you're ready, so that you can help other people. Because I've boiled it all down, and I've asked why did it happen to me, like all of us have a tendency to do. I've asked why a million times in my life, and my old wise self comes back to the same answer every time, which is so that you can help somebody else when it's their turn.
Yeah, sure.
For me, that's what works. That's what makes me feel good, and that's what keeps me in this place of like, other people feel really isolated. They feel really alone. And if we can do something that helps them feel a little less alone and gets them into this kind of a situation where they're vetting it out with a qualified person, this is what I want. Because I saw how much value it brought to my life.
Yeah.
I saw the way I was able to completely zoom out and really see what was happening.
Yeah.
And really step into the man that I want to be for me, for my wife, for my kids.
That's so nice.
The man that my little 12-year-old boy can feel proud of. That's the person I've been neglecting for so long. And I couldn't have gotten there without the help of a professional. That's why I sit down with you guys all the time. Because you're very, very valuable. And I also know that therapy works like this. And when somebody's ready to talk, sometimes there's a weight there that they have to get put on the books. And sometimes they have to wait 1, 2, 3 weeks to get in and get seen by somebody. And you know as well as I do, mental health comes with this momentum swing. And when you're ready to work on yourself, like you're ready today.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And you could wake up tomorrow and be like, I ain't doing that crap. That's for a lot of people. That's
oh no, that's
works.
Totally how it works. And I'm glad you normalized that, because like you can still go even when you're not ready.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or like you can still come to therapy and be like, I didn't want to come here today. I didn't want to see you today. I'm not offended. That's actually how that works.
I love
totally
that
fine.
you said that, because that's honesty.
Yeah, because like actually if it was so like your therapy is not actually working if it feels good every single time, and if you feel good every day about it, like good therapy has 2 elements, and I did not make this up. This is Marshall Linehan. It's like a DBT principle that we have empathy and accountability. Okay, if we have one without the other, it doesn't work. And also, this is a parenting principle.
Yes.
So like empathy, we of course need to like acknowledge like, wow, what happened to you sucks. Like you feel hurt. That's not fair. You know, and kind of be there with the person. But if you do that all the time, then this person's going to run rampant.
Sure.
You can't. The same thing with a child, right? You can't just let a kid do whatever they want because you love them.
Yes.
You can't let them run out in the street. You have to have accountability too. So it's like, okay, well, we have accountability for other people. If they've hurt us, we cannot allow them to continue hurting us.
Sure.
And we cannot go now hurting other people because we've been hurt.
That's it. That's how it works.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is actually rooted in a parenting philosophy called Love and Logic.
Oh, yeah.
My wife and I and many other of
I've
my
heard
friends.
this book.
Oh, yeah. I recommend it to absolutely every single human being that's going to procreate. I think it's the greatest. There's no manual for parenting, but Love and Logic is about as close as it gets with just kind of the how-to, because it's rooted in these principles.
Yeah. I mean, I would honestly say, like, and I'm not a parent, right? But like a lot of the stuff with parenting starts with your relationship with your spouse. And if you are doing the sort of like Gottman type of like spousal stuff, like if you are most of the time responding to your partner positively.
Yes.
They have a lot of other stuff too about like how to calm down in an argument, how to like return to topics, how do you like, like make a repair attempt when an argument has happened.
Love that.
Those kinds of things. If you do that as a parent, your kids see that and they will have like good emotional growth. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then it's just about honestly like trying to be there for your kid, and then whatever life throws at them. There's so many variations of things that happens with kids that it's hard to find a book on it, you know?
For sure. Can I drill in
Yeah,
a little bit on
go
something
ahead.
you just said, because it's really valuable. A repair attempt.
Yeah.
Okay, I call it having hard conversations, right? They're sometimes that's the same, sometimes not. But making a repair attempt. Most people, let's get on the couch. Most people will
I don't think you can stretch all the way out though. You're too tall.
I won't fit on this
I
thing.
know.
Most people, when they make a repair attempt, I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people,
sure, a lot.
my experience tells me that when people make repair attempts, it doesn't always come out like they thought it would, right?
Yeah, that's okay though, because you can like ideally in your relationships, whether this is a friendship or like a family relationship or your marriage, like you have unconditional regard for the other person, unconditional positive regard for the other person,
Yes.
right? Which means that like you're actually assuming positive intent, even when like you don't assume positive intent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That like your baseline is like, so if I have a misunderstanding with someone, the first thing that I'm trying to make myself think, it's not the first thing I actually think. The first thing I actually think is like, what the fuck? And I'm like super angry.
Right.
But like, let myself feel the feelings,
Yes.
Get out of the hot sun because heat is triggering to me. I can't handle it out here.
Yeah.
I gotta be in my like,
Air conditioning.
I literally walked in here today and like stuck my entire head in the freezer. It's not a big enough freezer. I need to like live inside it. So like
it's the Minnesotans in us. Like,
I know.
It drives me crazy. But I actually did read something 2 weeks ago about the heat actually causing or adding to depressive symptoms.
Actually,
and anxiety, and so I lump a lot of that, like anxiety, depression, anger, just being like in a mood.
Yeah. No, it makes people agitated for sure.
Heat pisses me off.
Yeah. So I have actually found with clients, I have always assumed it was a thing about like based on where you're born or whatever or what you're used to. But I will just ask clients like which temperature seems to regulate you. Like if you're stressed, do you want like a hot bath or like a heating pad, or
what do you want say?
It depends on the person, and it's not based on where they're from. Because I've met Minnesotans who like heat. Yeah, I know.
Listen, my wife loves it.
I always thought it was me just being like a polar bear.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, so back to repair attempts.
So repair attempts, okay, here's the thing. So you feel super angry or whatever you feel. You have to give space to your feelings, but you don't necessarily need to do that in the presence of the other person, right? So it may be a good idea to like take your space, go be pissed off, go hit a pillow, go like scream in your car or whatever. But then when they make the repair attempt, assume that they are trying to make a repair attempt, even if it's sloppy or weird.
A little messy, right?
Yeah, and it's so normal to see somebody like, a repair attempt could be something like, you know, you have a fight with your spouse and then the next morning they're like, hey, do you want to go shopping? Because that will work with me, by the way.
Noted. Yes.
So like the, you know, and even if I'm like, I don't want to go shopping, you know, but I do. Like, even if that comment, I'm like, how could you say that when I'm still so upset about this thing that we talked about?
Yes.
But I'm like, okay, wait, this is actually just like cracking the door open of saying like, hey, I want to talk about it, but I need to know that you're not going to rip my head off. I need to know that you're not going to talk me down. Because believe it or not, it's actually very difficult to argue with me because I will like walk circles around people verbally. And it's like very difficult to deal with. Like, therapists are not easy people to get along with. I will just use all of my tools as weapons sometimes. You know what I mean? And it's like in the most negative way possible, right? So I need to like literally put away my sword.
I love the honesty.
Yeah, but like if a therapist tells you that they're like all zen, you know, that the Buddha is sitting at the base of the tree, they are not.
Yeah.
They are not. That's such a lie.
Yeah. No.
And I don't want that therapist anyway. I want the person who actually did yell at somebody and then figured it out.
Yeah, because you need somebody to relate to.
Yes.
Yeah, and work these things out with. Yeah. So I think, okay, as we start to wind down, what we've talked about today is that people find themselves in all kinds of different situations. But in my opinion, at every turn, there's probably a professional who's got the ability to help you sort those things out.
Yeah.
And that's why we started this. It's because I want folks to know that you're out there and you're going, my life sucks. It doesn't make any sense. I'm in a relationship with somebody I don't want to be in. I hate my job. I hate my mom. Whatever it is, like, go sit down with somebody and see if there's a way for you to untangle that mess. And be honest with me, I think we have a tendency to complicate things. And usually our solution is quite simple. Am I wrong?
I think the solution can be simple, but like something can be said to you and you just truly don't believe it. Like, for example, telling people this idea of unconditional positive regard, they'll be like, yes, intellectually they're nodding, but inside they're like, ew. You know, like the idea, I don't know how many times I tell people something that is very obvious and they know it, right? Like, oh, you know, your mom should be nice to you. You know, or like, hey, your friends should call you and cancel instead of ditching you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's really basic stuff. And the person always knows it intellectually, but emotionally, they're like, no, for some reason, I'm the exception to the rule and it's okay for people to mistreat me. You know? So like, we have to do this thing where we can actually just start to believe ourselves. And I have this like exercise. Again, I did not make this up. Nothing I say I really made up.
Do I need tennis shoes?
Nah. You already have them on.
No,
I have and I love that you call them tennis shoes too. Yeah. That's a regional thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So like I call it the Colleen next door. Like I pretend there's me. She lives next door. Her life is identical to mine, but I'm externalizing. So I don't know, let's say that I'm like going to the mechanic because I hate going to the mechanic and I don't understand my car and I feel very scared and mistrustful, okay? And let's say they rip me off.
Yeah.
And I actually know they've ripped me off. Like I've kind of figured it out. I'm like, ugh. But then sometimes I will have the tendency to be like, you know what, maybe they didn't. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe I'm being crazy. So I do this thing. It's Colleen next door. If this person walked into my door, you know, if the Colleen next door sat on my couch and told me this story about the mechanic, would I go, oh my God, get a new mechanic? What are you talking about?
Right.
Because we externalize and then we can like actually see really clearly sometimes.
Beautiful.
But the emotional of like, oh, I've accepted this treatment for my entire life, so it must be what I deserve.
Yeah.
That's not really what you'd say to another person, though.
Yeah. That's so cool. In Buddhism, we call it Mahumadra, which means to step outside yourself and look at yourself. And so it's like basically taking the wise person to look at you. You know, so you
Is that a Buddha tattoo that you have?
This guy is, yeah. He's a laughing Buddha holding an old microphone.
That's cute. Okay.
Yeah.
That looks like such a painful place to get a tattoo. I could never.
It felt like I was being cattle prodded.
Okay, I like it when people are honest about tattoos.
It felt like when they got down to like this part down here.
No, I know.
And,
no, I
have one on this side too. When they got down to these little guys.
What's that one? An arrowhead?
This is this is a Cherokee. So my wife is Cherokee Indian.
okay.
And this is the word life in Cherokee Indian. And so I have a mantra of mine, which is that life comes from me. So basically, you know, like I create the life that I'm looking for. I don't play the blame game out there. It's like, that happened because this person did this to me. I just don't live my life that way. I'm like, okay. Oprah said one time, you can only be mad at yourself. And she's not wrong. Like, you can only be mad at yourself. And if you put yourself in a situation that sucks and something really bad happened, you're mad at yourself for like letting yourself go to that place, whether you know it or not. But so anyways, that's the meaning behind it.
When you say you can only be mad at yourself, I'm like, try me. I think I can be mad.
No, yeah, people have no problems being pissed off.
No, but I get
at
what
other
you're
people.
saying though. No, it's like you can feel anger in other ways, but like the actual sort of hatred or that loathing, that's like yourself. That's a projection.
That's you.
Yeah.
And if you can fix that, little things like putting up with friends who ditch you, that goes away.
Yeah. And I mean, like, we're talking sort of about like boundaries in a tangential way here,
we didn't
right?
even get there. We may have to do a part 2 because I actually did write down the whole thing on boundaries, and I was like, it's okay. I talk about boundaries a lot because I didn't have any, so we've got, you know.
Yeah, but a lot of people have no idea. They think that setting a boundary means that you have to dump the friend.
Right.
There's like such a big gap between I let people walk all over me on one hand, and like people don't get to do anything to me. Well, the in-between spaces where friendships and relationships occur, we have to tell people like, actually, you don't even need to tell people your boundaries. You just need to like have them.
And you just enforce them.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, well, if you're not going to call me and tell me that you're showing up, then I'm actually not going to go to the place because the last 3 times you didn't show up.
Right.
That's a boundary right there. You don't even need to tell the person though. You can just not go. And then they'll be mad. They'll be like, oh, you didn't go. And you'll be like, well, but last time you didn't go. So that's kind of where we're at. Yeah. And I would love to meet up with you. But if we can't be in the same physical place at the same time, we're not hanging out.
That's it. That's it. Who's the ideal person to come see you?
I thought,
What did you think I was going to ask?
I thought you were going to say, like, who's my, like, person that I, like, go to, or, like, my favorite psychologist or something.
Oh, no.
I was going to say Carl Rogers. I really like him.
Yeah. Okay. But who's a good fit for you?
Okay, I really want to be like inclusive, and that means, you know, like race, gender, age, all these things, sexuality.
All the things.
So like,
but themes are pretty universal.
Themes, yeah. Okay, well, people who like working with me tend to be people who intellectualize their problems because that's a problem I have. So I can talk on that. But for whatever reason, I don't even do this. I don't do it on purpose. People just email me and then they just sort of show up here, and then like most of the time we click. And sometimes people aren't ready for therapy, and that's fine. And sometimes I'm not very good. Honestly, sometimes I'm not. But like,
everybody has a bad day at work.
Yeah, right? I think I end up with people who are very similar to me, and I'll see them at the beginning and I'll be like, I don't quite know how we relate, and then it will just sort of happen. I'm like, oh, this is what you're about. So I tend to have people who hyper-intellectualize because I do it. I tend to have people who give, like, you know, people who do like helping profession types of jobs are more likely to come to therapy. People
I would think you'd be a really, really good fit for somebody that's been through domestic violence too.
Oh yeah, no, I am. I mean, that's my specialty. Yeah.
You've done that terrible dance before.
Yeah.
So I mean,
if you want to know,
relate, you understand.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to know my actual, like, what I advertise, it's childhood trauma, including sexual assault, domestic violence, and religious trauma.
Okay.
And
Wonderful.
then, like, encompassed in that is what we call a sort of garden variety, like, you know, like depression and anxiety.
Sure.
But that's like a tip of the iceberg problem. Like being, having depression or anxiety are usually like the diagnostic label that I can bill your insurance, and we dig deeper and there's other traumas there.
That's right.
So trauma is like the big thing that like our whole field is about right now. And so basically everybody who comes to therapy has some trauma. Like if you don't, cool, that's great. I've never met a healthy person like that, so I don't know who you are. I don't know who you are. Like, let me study you.
I know.
But there's no kind of one size fits all for what even trauma means. It's just like you have some attachment insecurity or attachment difficulty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
I'm
letting
so happy
me
to meet you. This
come
is
and
fun.
crash your pad and
No, that's
inviting
cool.
me into your space and sitting on your big green couch.
Yeah, next time we should do a sand tray.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1. To help you feel less alone. 2. Encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3. When you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Well, for those of you still hanging out who wondered, what is a sand tray? I asked her that question, and here's her response. And by the way, if you want to see a video of it, I'm going to post that on my Instagram page at Mathew Blades Media, so you can have a peek there when it's convenient for you.
It's actually laid out in a specific way. We do it, I do it left to right, because that's kind of how like Anglophones read.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So you have different objects here and they're symbolic. So right here we have kind of like transportation, we've got little trains and stuff, we've got like a lighthouse, we've got natural things like this pine cone, we've got, what is this? I was gonna say it's the Starship Enterprise, but it's not, it's another one.
It's like the
The
Falcon.
Millennium Falcon, yeah, okay. And then we have like animals, and then we have action figures that are like people, just different versions of people. So we have different ethnicities and ages, and we have superheroes, and we have kind of symbolic ones and stuff. And then we've got objects that are maybe more triggering. So we've got kind of like death and religion, and we've got, like little fake weapons and money and stuff, okay? So the idea is, if you're doing a sand tray with somebody, you might have them take figures and like, okay, show me your family. So you're gonna take like figures for every person in the family. Like I had one person who had like a really bad relationship with their sister, and this was the sister. Because this person has sort of like an explosive, like a little thing coming out the head like flames.
Looks like it's gonna kill you.
A person who has a temper, right? Or people might have this, like maybe they have like a religious grandmother or something like that. And the crucifix
It's really
reminds
cool.
them.
I never heard of sand trays before.
It's based on child therapy, but everybody likes playing.
Of course.
And if you're
I think
coming
it's
to therapy,
brilliant.
it's so great too, because when people struggle to talk, like you can't verbalize things traumatically sometimes. You can take a couple of things and say like, okay, tell me about your ex-boyfriend. Like, what do you know about that man?
Yeah,
now?
right.
Right.
You know everything you need to. That's incredible.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But I don't need to say anything to you. And so it's like art therapy adjacent.
I think it's cool.
You don't have to do art. You're just using objects.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
I'm a
feel
big
free
fan
to take
of
a
it.
picture and say that that's my ex-boyfriend. Everyone will know what I'm talking about.
This is your situation
Yeah.
here? Yeah. Oh, God. All right. Well, listen, thanks again for sitting down with me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. This was fun. Feels so important.
Beautiful job.
Okay.